Hey, it's Jeremy here with JLA Realty Omnia Elevate, and we're here today to discuss understanding required documents in Texas real estate. Now, for my JLA individuals, this does not replace boot camp. If you're a new agent and you haven't been to boot camp, it's the premier contract training that's offered by John Altick. It travels and it takes place all across the state. In fact, we have one coming up here in August in Fulshear, Texas. So this does not replace that. This is an overview to give you direction in maybe setting up your templates, having a basic understanding of the documents that you're going to need in a transaction, but to really understand the hows and the whys and how to explain that to your client, I'm going to encourage you to go to a boot camp. Now, if you're a guest on this call and not a real estate agent at JLA Realty, the things I'm going to say today are things that our broker has approved saying and how we want our agents to do their contracts. I'm going to share some information with you today, but I'm going to encourage you if you get stuck, not necessarily rely on this, to go to your broker and ask the questions pertaining to the contracts. So we're going to hop in. Okay, so why does documentation mastery matter? Well, first of all, it's legal compliance. If you do something long enough in this business, you're going to find yourself probably in a courtroom or at a minimum a mediation or in a dispute, maybe where it's settled by the broker. So the more you're going to do transactions, just the more opportunities that's going to happen. And so for legal compliance, every real estate agent must comply with TREC regulations. That's our regulating body. Texas Property Code, and any federal laws, including lead paint disclosures, and local Realtor Board rules. So, in the case of most of the agents in our organization, HAR, but I've got agents on our team that are in different MLSs boards across the state of Texas. These requirements they're not suggestions. They're not saying, hey, you may do this. It is, you will do this. And the reason is because of legal obligations that protect both you and your clients, and I would argue the other parties as well that's involved. Risk mitigation. So missing or mishandling required forms leads to serious consequences. It could lead to a formal complaint, which may be filed through TREC. TREC is the spokesperson for the consumer. So they may file a complaint against you. Substantial fines may take place, or it could end up, worst case scenario, a lawsuit. Proper documentation is your first line of defense against any professional liability, and it will protect your license and also it'll protect your broker. Professional excellence, proper documentation will build client confidence and protect your hard-earned reputation. When clients see you handle paperwork professionally, they're going to trust you more when you're able to not just fill in the blanks, but understand why you're filling in the blanks and be able to explain it to them in layman terms. They're going to be able to trust you at a deeper level with financial transactions, probably their largest financial transaction they'll make, which is either buying or selling a home. And then finally, your brokerage standards, JLA Realty, Omnia Elevate, an organization inside of JLA Realty that I get to lead, requires strict adherence to documentation protocols. Again, these are not suggestions, and it's not that we're trying to scare you. We're just trying to prepare you so that if an event does come up at some point down the road, you're going to have the proper documentation that's going to protect you, protect your client, and ultimately protect the brokerage and keep us out of comprehensive legal. It's going to provide the comprehensive legal protection for both you and the broker. All right, so some of the core documents we're going to master today is the IABS, the information about brokerage services. This is a TREC required disclosure, whether you're working with somebody or not. We'll go a little bit deeper into that. The CPN, which is short for Consumer Protection Notice. We're going to go through some of the local board MLS requirements. Some of the boards that my agents are in are HAR, SABOR, ABOR, Central Texas, and other local boards may mandate, profile information, listing requirements, and document uploads specific to your market. So you need to be aware of those as well. I'm very familiar with HAR because that's the MLS that I personally reside in and a member of. For the most part, there will be a lot of similarities across the state of Texas. But there's going to be some minute differences in each one of those MLS boards, and you need to be aware of that. Client-specific forms, required documentation, packages tailored for buyers, sellers, tenants, and landlords. Each are going to have unique disclosure and representation requirements. All right, so the IABS, it's your first critical document. Why this one matters? It's required by TREC Rule 531.2, and it must be provided at your first substantive communication with a buyer, seller, landlord, or tenant. So let's talk about when delivery is required. Before discussing client motivations or timelines, any financial qualifications or budget they may have, specific properties or price ranges. You're talking about representation agreements or showing homes or sending listings. Do not step through a threshold in the doorway threshold unless you have this signed. It is required. And today you need to have the buyer's representation agreement also signed in that case. Permitted delivery methods in person with acknowledgement. That's probably the one that would, it's the bare minimum. Typically, you're going to want to get more than that. But sometimes people won't sign it. You need to make sure that in your compliance that you're uploading that document, uploading maybe an email that you sent to them, just letting them know that they did receive it, and maybe a note that they chose not to sign it. So that's the weakest, lowest form is in person with acknowledgement. Email with a PDF attachment, a text message with secure PDF link, electronic signature like a DocuSign or a DigiSign, or post it on your website, and that's required actually by TREC, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. So over here on the right-hand side, we have the JLA required details. The firm name needs to be on there. The broker license, Universal Home Solutions, LLC. That broker license is different from John Altick, who is the broker's license. So make sure you make that distinction. So you'll have a broker license, then you're going to have your designated broker, which is John Altick. Licensed supervisor, in the case of members that are Omnia Elevate, that could be either myself or John. It could be either one. For all of JLA, uh, if you're with another manager, just talk to your manager and ask who would be my licensed supervisor in the case of me doing a transaction. That's the person that needs to go there along with their license number. And then your corporate address. So whatever that may be for our broker of record, they're located in Humble in 5332 FM 1960 Suite C. So that's got to be on there. Those are the four lines. Consumer protection notice. I'm going to go back real quick. Just a note specifically to Omnia Elevate members. All this information can be found on the Omni Elevate AI Assistant on our resource page. You can just put in there required information for the IABS, and it'll pull up all this information for you. So if you need it down the road and you can't find this information here, know that you can find it there. All right, consumer protection notice requirements. What is the CPN? So that's a TREC required document that must be posted on all your business website. It explains recovery funds, complaint procedures, licensee oversight to protect consumers. So my understanding over the years, and as far as I know, this is to be true, is that you need to have at a minimum when it says all websites, if you have one website for your business, have the consumer protection notice there. And as long as everything points back to that website, your Facebook page, your Instagram page, LinkedIn, all your social sites, if they all point back to that, to what we'll call the master website for your business, and it has the consumer protection notice, you're covered. So website placement must appear prominently on your real estate website where consumers can find it easily, not buried in fine print or hidden in navigation. All right. I include mine in the footer. It's prominent. By putting it in the footer, I know it's going to be on every single page of the website. Any future page that I create, my CPN will be there. Proper linking must be a hyperlink labeled exactly this, Consumer Protection Notice. It can't be CPN with a hyperlink. It has to say Consumer Protection Notice. Again, we want to make it prominent and not something that's hidden. Right. Email signature. Both the IABS and the CPN links must appear at the top of your email signature line before other contact information. I see this a lot because it doesn't look pretty, is they'll put it below the contact information. That is a TREC violation. So you want to put those links at the top. And where you can find these, I know if you're an HAR member, if you go into the member service area and in the search box, just type IABS, it will have a link to a IABS form that's completely filled out with all the proper contact information. It'll also include a link to the CPN. So if you're looking for updated links, you can find them there and just add them to your signature. So again, in the email signature, it's going to say information about brokerage services and then consumer protection notice. It's not going to be the shortened version. So common compliance errors to avoid: broken or outdated links, wrong CPN version, incorrect label text, missing on landing pages, not on secondary websites, and absent from link trees. So again, people aren't looking for this until something goes wrong. So you do something wrong, the broker catches wind of it, they're going and they're reporting you to TREC to take a look at your email signature. So that's typically how it happens, is another agent that's policing you or feels like you've wronged them, goes out, tells their broker makes a complaint, TREC files the report, and next thing you know, there's a fine with that. So just keep yourself from that situation by making sure your IBS and CPN are on your email signature and again, prominently displayed on your website. All right, so HAR and local MLS requirements. Again, if you're not in HAR, you'll need to confer with your local MLS board to make sure that you're in compliance. But mandatory profile information, full legal name matching track records. If you're doing your business in a different name or an assumed name, you need to make sure you have those forms filled out and submitted to your broker and also to TREC. License number and brokerage name, contact phone number and email, updated professional headshot. Now, it's not a requirement to have your headshot. I'm saying it's mandatory because I want all my people to do it. Because when somebody's going and they're searching for an agent online and they see that grayed out picture with the question mark, do you think they're going to hire them? No, it doesn't look professional. So make sure you have a headshot and make sure that headshot carries across to all your profiles. That is in a way branding, and we'll talk about branding later on. The office address and your IABS CPN links clearly displayed. All right, so mandatory listing requirements, accurate property data and descriptions. Do not do anything that's going to violate fair housing law. TREC marketing rules, HAR, TXR, NAR. You can always run those descriptions through ChatGPT and prompt it to make sure that it's not violating those. That can get you a fine. Seller completed seller's disclosure before activation. Notice I said seller completed. You are not to help the sellers with the seller's disclosure. Seller's disclosure about groundwater and surface rights. This is a new form that's recently come out. JLA requires it on all transactions regarding listings. There is a link to a viewer to where they can go in and search their property address to tell them what groundwater water and surface rights they may have. They have to fill this form out. You cannot help them do that. The good news is you can find both of these disclosures at Seller Shield. Seller Shield is great because it forces the seller to fill out every blank on the form. They can't skip through and not not include something. It will not let them complete it. So, and if you've ever got to update it, they could go back in and update it. The only thing I'll tell you with Seller Shield is just make sure and iterate this multiple times that they do not need to pay for the additional insurance. They can choose to, but they don't need to pay the additional insurance to be able to use Seller Shield. Gather up any HOA documents and contact information for that. Water district notices. Required addenda, like the MUD. If it's before 1978, get the lead-based paint. If it's 1979, go ahead and get the lead-based paint. So anything close to that, it's always good to have more paperwork than less. And then the survey and the T47.1 affidavit when applicable. There is a T47, but it requires you to get it notarized. The T47.1 does not. Document upload expectations, fully executed listing agreement. This is in compliance. Completed seller's disclosure. The seller's disclosure about groundwater and surface rights. If it's in a MUD or a PID, you need to have that loaded. If you'll go to boot camp, you'll understand why having the MUD done right up front is very, very important, and you have to get it to the prospective buyer before you have an executed contract. If not, you provide a way out for the buyer. Lead-based paint addendum, pre-1978. Survey documentation only. So survey documentation in the T47.1, you are going to load this into, in our case, back agent for compliance, but you will not load the T47.1 to the MLS agent docs. Those documents are made available to other agents. You'll only give that once an offer is submitted. The reason being is on the second page of the T47.1, there is sensitive data for the seller, including their birth dates. So we don't want that out there necessarily floating around. Optional, you're going to upload any utility info, improvements lists, floor plan. So when you're working with buyers, required forms. So primary documents are going to be your buyer tenant representation agreement, and you should have this before you go out and show them a home. You should explain to them what the different types of representation that can take place, and they need to sign that before going out and showing property. There is a short form. We really don't like you having that signed. The only time that it might be a good form is like if you're hosting an open house and you have somebody come in that maybe wants to go see a house down the street immediately after your open house. Short form may be good there, but I would eventually get them to the TXR 1501. It's just a lot more thorough. Amendment to modify area dates, BTSA disclosures. Once you have an executed contract, you should never change anything on the contract. Everything should be done at that point through an amendment. The termination, hopefully you won't need this, but this will end the relationship between you and the client. And then the 2405, which is a referral agreement between brokers, this is going to be used if you're sending a referral to another agent. Maybe you get a prospect, but it's not in your geographic competency. And so you send that client to somebody else and you want to get paid 20, 25%, 30%, whatever you negotiate as far as a referral. This is the form that secures that. Contract forms that you're most frequently going to use, your 1-to-4 family residential contract, third-party financing addendum, unless they're doing cash, appraisal addendum. This is required by JLA Realty. And if you're a guest or watching this today in Texas, I would definitely use this if it is a conventional loan. All right. So go to boot camp. We'll go into specifically why that needs to happen. Just know that if you got a conventional loan, you're going to want to have the appraisal addendum for conventional loans. Property owners associate addendum and backup addendum when applicable. So, something's under contract, your client really likes it. Instead of waiting, you can put in a backup addendum that will take place immediately upon the other contract terminating. So it puts your client in line, sets them up for that property in the event they really like it, but it's under contract currently. Required disclosures, your lead-based paint, again, wire fraud notice. You're not going to get paid at our company unless you have this. There's more and more wire fraud that's taking place. And it seems like almost once a month we're hearing of an instance, whether it's within our company or outside of it, that people are targeting individuals and capturing information, submitting wiring instructions that ends up sending the money overseas. So you've got to go over that with them. It's a huge deal. We need to have them sign that. You don't get paid unless that happens. Buyer walkthrough. It is also a requirement of our company to have the buyer walkthrough. Now, We're not going to go into the weeds on this, but if you're a JLA Realty agent, Omnia Elevate member within JLA, the expectation is you are to do the walkthrough in person with the client that's buying the house on the way to closing. Not 3 days before, not a week before, not afterwards, too late. You're going to go do this right before you go to the closing, and you're going to have them sign off on this document. Broker compensation, just to let you know, many of you know that are on this. If you're new, you've probably been trained to this, but as of July 1st, 2026, the TXR 2402 and the TXR 2401 have both been retired. All commission is now negotiated in paragraph 12 of the 1-4 contract. It's a beautiful thing. Everything is now on the contract and visible to everybody. Okay, when you're working with sellers, so listing documentation, you want to have the exclusive right to sell listing agreement. It's foundational. It's what starts everything. Also maintain the TXR 1404 amendment to the listing. So anytime again you're making a change to the listing agreement, you're not going to do it on the listing agreement. You're going to do it through an amendment. The TXR 1417 is a representation disclosure. That's a great form that says, hey, I'm representing the seller in this case, or I'm representing the buyer. So really good to use, especially if you're representing a listing and you have an unrepresented buyer that's wanting to put an offer in on the house and they choose not to have representation. You are definitely going to want to use this form, have them sign it saying, hey, I'm representing only the seller here. The TXR 1410 is termination of listing forms. We're going to hope you don't have to use that. We're going to hope that you get priced right, marketed correctly, and sold. But that would be the legal form to terminate the listing. Mandatory disclosures. We covered some of these. The seller's disclosure. There's a TXR one and there's a TREC one. You cannot tell your client which one to choose. You want to send them to Seller Shield. They can make their choice there. And again, it's the great thing about this service is they have to fill out the whole thing. They can't leave anything blank. It's not going to allow them to complete it otherwise. You cannot help them on this form. If there's any changes, we get storms here in the greater Houston area, Texas coastal bend, where you might have a hurricane come and you had your home listed before, maybe there was some damage done and you've got to update that disclosure. Maybe you had a termite treatment or something after you've done the disclosure. This is the form to update that information. Remember, put everything. This is what I would encourage your seller. Put everything on there. Again, this is to protect the seller. Anything that's not disclosed is going to open up the seller liability. So a lot of people will try to not put stuff on here to hide it, thinking, well, I don't want the buyer to know about it. That is going to get your seller into a lot of trouble. So you want them to disclose everything. Again, it's for them because you're disclosing it to them now. They know about it. They can't come back on the seller. So very, very important. The seller's disclosure about groundwater and surface rights is also required on all JLA documents. It can also be filled out on Seller Shield. Special notices, water district notice, new 2024 rules require obtaining that directly from the district. I still have individuals saying, hey, what about that Form 400? That form has been gone for almost a year. It's probably been 2 or 3 years now. You have to get that directly from the district, and it's very, very important that you have that. And when an offer is submitted, that is sent to the buyer's agent prior to execution of the contract. If not, that provides the buyer a way out. Again, go to boot camp, and you'll know more details on how to deal with that. Any special taxing district, need to notify them of that. And again, the T47.1 survey declaration when applicable. Again, T47, you have to get it notarized. A T47.1, you don't. But the sellers will need to include some sensitive information like birth dates. Additional requirements. Lead-based paint disclosure for anything pre-1978. Again, my advice is if it's anywhere close, still go ahead and get them that form. The more paperwork, the better. Wire fraud notice is required by us. Seller termination of contract. You can't just terminate or just say, hey, we're done. You have to have this form in place. The termination of contract TXR 1950, and you need to look specifically at the reasons for termination. And then you also need to look at release of earnest money forms and everything like that. But again, that's a great reason to go to boot camp. All right, tenant landlord documentation. Just FYI, if you're representing the tenant, a lot of this is going to be driven by the landlord as far as like preparing the documents to sign. So just know that. Working with tenants, representation forms, again, you're going to have the IABS, just like you would on a residential resale transaction or listing. TXR 1501, the buyer tenant representation agreement. So, yes, you need that again before you go out and start showing homes. You have to tell them what representation is, how you're going to get paid, those different types of things. Broker compensation forms. 2002 is still in use. 2402, I have not updated this. The 2402 no longer exists. So, that's gone. Transaction documents, the residential lease application. Now, I want to make a note here on lease applications is there is a TXR form. Anybody over the age of 18 that's going to be in that property must fill out a residential lease application. No ifs, ands, buts. So even if they have a grown child, they're 18 or they're 19, they're going to have to fill out an application as well. Before you do that, though, first check the MLS to see if the listing agent requires tenants to use a specific platform. HAR has Rent Spree, or there's agents out there that will use Smart Move for the application process. You don't want to have them go through the process of filling out that TXR 2003 when the landlord says, no, I want you to use Rent Spree or I want you to use Smart Move. But again, if they're over 18, they're going to be using whatever program the listing agent or possibly the property management company may be using to for application. And if you're in doubt, if there's not a link provided, you can always reach out to the listing agent before you go through the entire process. Flood disclosure addendum is mandatory by state law. And again, if it's pre-1978, the lead-based paint disclosure. Along with that's going to be the pamphlet. Make sure that the pamphlets gets to the tenant as well. I think it's like a $10,000-$15,000 fine now, and it's federal. So it's not a state thing, it's a federal thing. Situational forms, maybe inventory and condition form. I highly recommend that form if you're representing a tenant. Typically, you're going to get 7 to 10 days in the contract, or you want to let the listing agent for the landlord know, hey, we want to do that. We need 7 to 10 days for that. But it gives the tenant the opportunity to go through and check basically the condition of the property and let the landlord know what it is when they moved in, so that when they move out, they're not going to get charged for things that were already an issue. Parking rules and animal agreements, HOA rules and documentation. Working with landlords, listing forms, the residential real estate listing agreement, exclusive right to lease. You need a CMA. You also need to have them sign that CMA. W-9 for cooperating agents, for agents that are in JLA Realty Omni Elevate. You can find that on our resource page towards the bottom. For JLA agents, you can find that on the JLA Realty Agents Facebook page. Just search documents. Copies of checks for deposits and rent. Required disclosures, flood disclosure addendum, lead-based paint, again, on-site sewer facility. They have septic. And then interbroker agreements, the 202 agreement between brokers for residential lease. Just goes into more detail about how agents will be paid. Again, the 2402 is no longer in existence, thank goodness. And then the key box authorization and unescorted access forms. So those are great forms, again, just to provide protection for you and for your client. All right, so again, today I want to express again, this is an overview. For us to go into each form, we would be here all day, probably into the late evening to go through the main forms, and then you have all the addendums that go with that. So again, I'm going to encourage you, especially if you're a JLA agent, is to go to a boot camp. If you're listening to this and you're not with JLA, there are opportunities to attend one of these boot camps as a guest, you can reach out to me personally, and I'll make sure you get registered if space is available. And JLA boot camps, we will provide you a notebook that has the contract and addendums that will cover that day, including the 1 to 4 in the listing agreement is the focus. What's also great about this event is you get 5 hours of free CE credit. But you get to walk out with a notebook with all those notes and being able to hear one of the best in the industry, John Altick, who happens to be the broker of JLA, teach on this. And you'll walk out feeling a lot more confident on how to importantly explain the contract to your clients. Most will teach to the contracts of numbers to put in, but they really don't explain the why and how to explain it to your client. And that's what happens in boot camp. So again, if you're a guest on here and would like to attend, reach out to me and I'll make sure that happens for you. So your action plan here, set up a digital filing system. So I personally use DocuSign, and we use Back Agent for compliance with our organization. And so that's a reservoir to deposit the documents. You can also, some people will use, and I'll put a copy inside of my Google Drive, so I can easily access and share documents with my clients on the fly. But you need to have some sort of digital filing system where you're putting all your documents. And we didn't talk about it today, but you want to have a communication log as well. That could be all the emails between you and that client that are downloaded, screenshots of your texts, those type of things that you're going to want to tuck away in the event something happens down the road. You've got all the information with your file. You're going to want to update your digital presence. So add IABS and CPN links to your website, email signature, digital business card, anywhere that you see fit. Again, if you're pointing everything back to your website, I believe it'd be sufficient if you had it on your website and every page of your website, and it has to be prominent and displayed as we had talked about earlier. Master property specific disclosures, so memorize your disclosures applied to which property types, any pre-1978 homes, flood zones, mud, pit districts, the new water disclosure for water rights, all those you want to make sure that you understand, even though you can't help your clients fill out those disclosures. They have to fill them out on their own, but it's good for you as an agent to understand what it is. 4, stay current with annual training, attend a boot camp. And for those that are on here that are JLA or a member of my organization, Omnia Elevate, inside of JLA, don't go to boot camp once and say you're done. Go to boot camp as often as possible, and I encourage you to go outside of your area. For instance, we have one in Fulshire, then we're going to have one in Beaumont, we have one in Lake Jackson, we've had one in Corpus Christi, we've had one in San Antonio. The reason to get outside your market is to develop relationships with real estate agents in other markets in which you may be able to send a referral. So go there and learn the material and be purposeful about building relationships that could benefit you down the road in that scenario. Ask questions. There are no dumb questions. Ask the questions. Make sure you understand. One of the things I appreciate about John at the boot camps is at the end, he'll say, I will stay until all questions are answered. And he'll sit up front and continue to answer questions until all questions have been asked. It's very important. It's going to protect you. It's going to protect your clients, and it's going to protect the brokerage. So again, proper documentation isn't just about compliance. It's about protecting your clients, your reputation, and your career. If you can master these requirements, you're going to stand out as a true professional in the Texas real estate market. And I assure you, there's thousands and thousands of agents, and you can tell the difference between the true professional and the one that's the fly-by-night, or it's a hobby, or they watch too many shows on television, thinking they can do it, and they haven't really prepared themselves or put themselves in a position to be successful. You can tell the difference between the agent that knows their contracts and the agents that don't. And you can see it in their bank account. Their income is going to be much higher because when they go out and they meet with their prospects, when they're meeting with their sellers, and they're able to explain the contracts and tell them why, you're automatically going to build trust, which is going to make the process much smoother. You're going to get them to the closing table, and then at the end of the day, they're going to use you again. More importantly, they're going to refer you to their friends, family, and coworkers. So if you have any questions, reach out to your broker, reach out to your licensed supervisor, and make sure that understanding your documents is one of your priorities inside of your business. Until next time, have a great day.